Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the college football edition of Proline. I'm John Cranton, joined by Jeff Sadi, runs Las Vegas Sports Services. Today, we're going to take a look at the 2015 Pac-12, both North and South in college football. In fact, let's get right into it. Caesars Palace, they're looking at Oregon to win the national title at 18-1, and USC has moved up to 10-1. So you got a couple of Pac-12 teams who are in the potential national title running. Last year the Pac-12 North was dominated by Oregon. They went 7-1 in the conference. Stanford went 5-4. They took a step back, and Arizona at 7-2 won the Pac-12 South. They met in the Pac-12 title game, and it wasn't even close as Oregon rolled 51-13. Then the Ducks got their comeuppance against Ohio State, a 42-20 loss. Oregon loses Marcus Mariota. That's the big story, and Tennessee Titans are going to find out whether he is really a system quarterback or not, and that's what Oregon is going to try to find out, if they can plug in a system quarterback. So, Jeff, what's in store for the Ducks this fall?
Well, they returned 6 on offense, 5 on defense. Senior Vernon Adams is transferring from Eastern Washington, but he couldn't play in the spring game because he hadn't graduated yet from Eastern Washington. So Jeff Locke Jr. has a leg up on him. He was played in the spring game. And also last year he played in one game, in limited action last 2 years. He's 29-41. So Vernon Adams would probably be the starter, else he wouldn't have gone there. But right now he's at the school yet, so they haven't seen him play yet. The loaded at running back with Royce Freeman and Thomas Tyner. Freeman had 18 TDs. Tyner has averaged more than 6 yards per carry the last 2 years. The wide receiver, Byron Marshall's back. He had 1,000 yards receiving last year, plus Dwayne Stanford. And Devin Allen is back, but he's recovering from a torn ACL that he suffered in the Rose Bowl. Also, Braylon Addison is back after missing last year with a knee injury. So they're still pretty loaded on offense. The offensive line had a lot of injuries last year. They really didn't get it straightened out to the end of the season. But the 5 starters that ended the season last year in the offensive line are back this year. So all those injuries last year may have helped in the long run because they got a lot of experience. On defense, the Ducks returned 2 of their best linemen in DeForest Buckner and Alex Balducci. Experienced linebacking core, but only 1 starter back in the secondary, Reggie Daniels. The schedule, they open against Eastern Washington, which should be interesting. And then they go to Michigan State. Home versus Georgia State. Didn't have to play SC and Arizona State the last 2 years, but they do this season. At home, they have Utah, Washington State, Cal, USC, and Oregon State. Away, they have Colorado, Washington, Arizona State, and Stanford. I don't think they're net. I think it's going to be a step down from last year. I don't think they're national championship contenders. I'll go with a 10-2 season for Oregon, John.
All right, I'll take a look at the Stanford Cardinals. Slipped a little bit last year as they were rebuilding 8-5 record, just 5-4 in the Pac-12. However, David Shaw's team kind of made a statement late last year, going 3-0 straight up in ATS to end the 2014 season. And in the bowl game, they whipped Maryland 45-21 as a 14-point favorite. And they've got a lot of talent back. 9 starters on offense, 4 on one of the nation's best defenses last year, which is why they're on a 9-3 run under the total. The offense looks pretty solid, 27.2 points per game last year with exceptional balance, including 158.8 yards rushing. They returned senior quarterback Kevin Hogan, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 66% completions. He's also a very good runner, ran for 295 yards. And he doesn't have to do it alone because Stanford backfield has senior running back Raymond Wright at 601 yards. They got senior running back Kelsey Young and a sophomore tailback in Christian McCaffrey. He's a very talented player. So this should be a terrific offense. And Stanford has one of the best offensive lines in the country, so no problems with this offense. Defense was second in the country last year, giving up just 16.4 points per game. They've ranked 10th and second the last 2 years. And they do lose some players, but still you got senior linebacker Kevin Anderson and Blake Martinez back. Did lose 3 guys on the line, and the secondary lost 4 key players. The guy to watch would be cornerback Ronnie Harris. He is coming back, but he is recovering from an injury. But overall, won't be a top 5 defense again, it looks like. But the offense will be balanced. They will be able to score some points, and the defense, as usual, will be very good. So it's going to be a good season. The schedule for Stanford, got a tough schedule in that they open with 3 of their first games on the road, and one of them is at Northwestern of the Big Ten. And they're going to get a September 19th game at USC. So you're going to see how good this team is early on. Their road games at Northwestern, USC, Oregon State, Washington State, and Colorado, not so bad. And then, of course, to end the season, They're going to host Notre Dame, and they're going to host Oregon November 14th, so it's not an easy schedule overall. It's been a run-first team with great defenses, which is why Stanford is on a 25-14 run under the total. I wouldn't be surprised to see that continue, but the Stanford team looks a little bit better than last year, so I can see them creeping back to the 9 or 10 mark. All right, Jeff, for Chris Peterson, he had some ups and downs in his Husky debut last year, so what's up for Washington in his second season?
I think Chris Peterson might regret making this move after this year. They have a lot. They returned 5 on offense, 4 on defense, and they have to find a quarterback. They lost 3 starters in the offensive line. Only 1 starter from the front 7 on defense is back. So it's going to be a tough year for Chris Peterson. Jeff Lindquist is the only quarterback with the game experience. He completed 10 of 30 passes in his only start last year versus Hawaii. Siler Meyer was a quarterback, took a leave of absence from football. Also in the mix, redshirt freshman KJ Carter-Samros and true freshman Jake Browning. Running back Dwayne Washington returns. Averaged 5.3 yards per carry last year. Looking good at wide receiver, Jaden Mickens, Dante Pettis, and John Ross. 2 excellent tight ends with senior Josh Perkins and junior Darrell Daniels. Defense will have to be rebuilt. As I said, they only have 1 back from the front 7. 3/4 of the secondary is back, including Sidney Jones and Buda Baker. But last year, Washington 8-6, 7-7 against the spread. They were 4-5 in the conference. This year, I think they'll take a step back. I just don't see. There's just too much to rebuild and replace there with this team. And their opening game is at Boise State. That could be an embarrassment for Chris Peterson if he loses that game. They also have home games against Utah State and California. In the conference on the road, it's at USC, Stanford, Arizona State, Oregon State. The rest of the home conference, Oregon, Arizona, Utah, and Washington State. They could pull out maybe 3 or 4 wins this year, John. That's all I can see.
Okay, another team that is kind of rebuilding is Oregon State because they struggled last year. 5 wins and 7 losses. Couldn't cover up numbers either. 3-9 spread run and a lot of changes in store. Mike Riley, who was there 14 years, he is gone. The new coach is very good, though. Gary Anderson out of Wisconsin, one of the hottest coaching commodities in the country, and he wound up with the Oregon State Beavers. But he's got a lot of work to do because the offense was 89th in the country in scoring last year, and it was all passing, 32nd with 275.4 yards passing, but they don't have a quarterback. There are 7 quarterbacks on the roster, but only one of them has experience. They are leaning towards sophomore quarterback Luke Del Rio. Yes, he is the son of Jack Del Rio, the Oakland Raiders coach, but he only threw for 141 yards last year, so a lot of question marks there. At least surrounding whoever's going to be the quarterback, there is plenty of experience, talent, very good wide receivers led by junior Victor Bolden. He had 798 yards last year, and a 6'4 sophomore in Jordan Villeman with almost 600 yards. And the ground game should be good with senior running back Storm Woods. He had 766 yards, providing balance, in fact, 6.3 yards per carry. And a couple years ago, he had 940 yards. So they've got good skill position players, but they've got to figure out who the quarterback is going to be. And this defense is not going to help the offense at all. They were 98th in the nation in scoring, 31.6 points per game. They only have 2 starters back on the defense. And to put into perspective how this team struggled at times last year they opened against Portland State. They were 32.5-point favorite, won the game 29-14. If you go back 2 years ago, they opened against Eastern Washington as a 26-point favorite. Lost the game straight up 49-46. And a couple other games that they played the last 2 years, they gave up 69 points to Washington and 51 to Utah. So this defense is not very good and doesn't have any experience either. So it's going to be a difficult season. And making matters worse will be the schedule. 6 road games for Oregon State. Even in week 2, they're going to have to play at Michigan, a long road trip. And they've got road games at Arizona, Washington State, Utah, Cal, and Oregon. In fact, they have a stretch starting October 10th where they're going to play 4 of 5 games on the road. So there's really a lot of things going wrong in the wrong column for Oregon State. I can't imagine them having a winning season. They have 1-5 straight up and against the spread as an underdog the last couple of years. They're also 20-16 over the total with what had been a good passing game and a bad defense. So this team is rebuilding. I think Oregon State should be lucky to shoot for 6 wins, a 6-6 season, and maybe get a bowl out of that. All right, speaking of rebuilding, Mike Leach continues to do that with Washington State, Jeff.
Well, he only has 12 wins in his first 3 years, and this season could be just as tough. They returned 7 on offense, 6 on defense. Last year they were 3-9 overall, 4-8 against the spread. They have to replace Connor Halliday, and he got drafted by the Redskins. Then he promptly retired from football. So, sophomore Luke Falk looks like the leading contender. He replaced Halliday last year in the loss against USC and was 38 of 57 for 370 yards and 2 TDs, 1 interception. Cougars have 2 talented running backs with Gerard Wicks and Jamal Morrow. Deep at wide receiver, Gabe Marks returns after missing last season due to an injury, and Dom Williams and River Craycraft are back. They lose Vince Maley to the NFL. Spurring this offensive line, 4 of 5 are juniors and seniors. So on offense, they're in decent shape. If the new quarterback can be decent, they'll be all right. They'll score points. But the defense is just going to be another problem. They have a new coordinator, Alex Grinch. Spent the last 3 seasons at Missouri. The Cougars gave up nearly 300 yards passing last season, which was 124th in the country. They're still very young on defense, so Grinch has a tough job ahead of him. He's going to primarily use a nickel defense. So it's going to be the same story with the Mike Leach team. If the offense can score enough points to cover up the defensive flaws, they'll win a few games. They open it versus Portland State, at Rutgers, and then home again against Wyoming. Remember last year, in the opener, they blew that game. They lost to Rutgers 41-38, so that's going to be a revenge game, although it's going to be tough on the road. Home conference games, Oregon State, Stanford, Arizona State, and Colorado. Road conference, Cal, Oregon, Arizona, UCLA, and Washington. I don't think they'll quite make a bowl game this year. I'll go with a 5-7 record for Washington State, John.
All right, I'll take a look at the Cal Golden Bears. You know, they only won 5 games last year, but there was enormous optimism under this coach, Sonny Dykes, because they went from 1 win to 5, and they had one of the best offenses in the country last year, 15th in the nation in yards, total yards. And Sonny Dykes has 8 starters back on offense and 7 on defense, one of the best offenses in the country, 11th in scoring, 38.3 points per game, 6th in the nation in passing with 346 yards per game. Even the ground game isn't that bad, 149 yards rushing per game. And you might not have heard of their quarterback, but he's back, 6'4" junior, Jared Goff. This guy had 35 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions last year, close to 4,000 yards, 62% completions. And they're loaded at wide receiver. Chris Harper is back, a senior. Stefan Anderson is back. He had 661 yards. He's a 6'3" senior. Another senior in Bryce Treggs. And they love to spread the ball around under Sonny Dykes, so everybody gets involved, including running back Dan Lasko. He had 356 yards receiving, so that means their 6 top targets are back. Lasko was also a terrific runner. He had over 1,100 yards rushing, 5.3 yards per carry. Throw in the fact that 3 of 5 offensive linemen are back, and this is going to be, once again, one of the best offenses in the country. Now, when you run this no-huddle up-tempo attack, you can struggle on defense, and boy, this Cal defense, that is the problem for them. They were 123rd in the nation in points allowed, 39.8, so these defensive players get gassed, and they're not very good, which is why the offense has to score so many points. However, they do have some guys up front returning. The secondary loses 3 starters, and you could pass all day on them, 367 yards per game. So they're going to have to hope that a 6'2" transfer, Darren Brown, a JUCO transfer, he can help the secondary as he's going to step in. Not a very good pass rush, which certainly hurts the secondary as well. So once again, they're going to be unstoppable on offense, but they're going to give up plenty of points. The schedule, they're probably going to be 2-0 with an easy start at home. But then after that, Cal plays 4 of 5 games on the road. Going to be at Texas, Washington State, Utah, and UCLA. In fact, that's a stretch where they're going to be playing 6 of 9 games on the road. And they did lose to USC last year as a 14-point dog, 38-30. So they're pretty good as potential backdoor covers as big dogs with this incredible offense. But the way to look at them, they're on a 7-4 run over the total. That's the way I can see this shaping up for 2015. Good team to look at over the total. And with their talent on offense, you know, they could get to the 5-win mark again and maybe a 6 and possibly a bowl. So it's certainly an up-and-coming program that Sonny Dykes has with the Golden Bears. All right, before we move on to the Pac-12 South, if you want to go to Jim Feist's YouTube page, it's called Sports Betting. Just click on the link right above us. You get updates from all sports betting videos, and it's free to sign up. Plus, if you want to go to the website, jimfeist.com, just click on that football right above us. That is a link directly to the site. Jim has NFL previews, college football previews, and new members to the site get a $50 credit.